The training hall of the alien garrison was filled with noise and laughter. Long rows of armored soldiers sat at shining tables, their tusks, fangs, and scaled faces twisted into grins. The air smelled of metal and smoke, the atmosphere alive, with arrogance. They were young warriors, fresh from academy drills, and they believed themselves stronger than any other race. The topic of the day was humanity. Stories about humans had spread across the galaxy for centuries. Tales of battles where small groups of humans fought against overwhelming odds and survived. Stories of warriors who never surrendered. Myths of fleets that defeated enemies, far greater in size and power. These stories had been passed down like legends, but to the alien soldiers gathered in that hall, they were nothing more than jokes. One soldier with thick horns leaned back and roared with laughter. Humans? My grandfather fought them in the border wars. He said they were fragile, small, and weak. Their so-called myths are lies to make them seem dangerous. Another soldier slammed his fist against the table. His claws scratched deep grooves into the metal as he sneered. Yes, if humans were as strong as their myths say, they would have ruled the galaxy by now. Instead, they hide behind allies and old stories. The hall shook with laughter. Ladies, young warriors shouted and jeered, mocking humans as if they were nothing but shadows. At the front of the room, the alien commander sat in silence. He was older, his body scarred, his eyes colder than the younger soldiers could understand. He did not laugh. He simply waited until the noise died down, and then he stood. His voice carried through the hall, heavy with authority. You laugh at human myths, he said slowly. But do you know why those stories still exist? Why every academy across the galaxy includes them in your training? The laughter dimmed, though a few soldiers still chuckled. One raised his hand mockingly. Because humans are good entertainment, Commander. Better than war stories, like children's tales. The hall erupted again. The commander's eyes narrowed. No, you will not laugh for long. Today you will meet someone who has lived these myths. The room grew quiet. Soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. Who could the commander mean? The heavy doors at the side of the hall slid open. A human stepped inside. The alien soldiers leaned forward, their laughter returning in whispers. He was not tall compared to them, not broad, not terrifying in appearance. His armor was old, scratched and worn, his body marked with scars that had never fully healed. His face was calm, but his eyes carried something none of the aliens could understand, something cold, heavy, and unshaken. A voice rose from the back of the hall. This is the human who will teach us myths. He looks broken. The hall filled with more laughter, cruel and mocking, but the human did not react. He walked slowly, steadily, until he reached the front. He did not raise his voice. He did not strike his fist. He simply stood silent, his eyes scanning the crowd. And slowly, the laughter began to fade. There was something in those eyes, something that made even the boldest alien soldier shift in his seat. The commander gestured. To him, this is a veteran of the wars. He has fought in battles you only know as legends. He has lived the stories you mock. The human finally spoke. His voice was quiet but sharp, each word cutting through the silence like a blade. You laugh at human myths because you believe they are lies. But tell me, why do lies survive for centuries? Why do your commanders still whisper them to new recruits? Why do your leaders still tell you to fear the day you fight us? The room was silent. Dozens of alien eyes stared at him, waiting. The human's lips curled into the faintest of smiles. Because they are not myths. They are memories. Gasps filled the hall. Some soldiers tried to laugh again, but their voices were weaker now, forced. The veteran continued, his words slow, his tone calm, but heavy. I have fought when our numbers were 1 against 10. I have stood in trenches when the sky burned, when the ground shook with enemy fire. I have seen fleets collapse not because of their weakness, but because of our will. You call them stories. I call them scars. He reached to his side and pressed a small device. The lights in the hall dimmed, A holographic display filled the air above him. Scenes of war flickered. Humans standing shoulder to shoulder, firing against beasts larger than tanks, holding their lines even as allies fell. Small ships darting between massive alien war cruisers, striking again and again until the giants of metal burned and fell from the sky. The alien soldiers leaned forward, their laughter gone. Their eyes widened as they watched human soldiers refuse to break, even in the face of overwhelming power. The human veteran turned slowly to face them all. His voice was steady, sharp as steel. You believe these are myths, but these are truths, carved into history. You laugh at them because you have never faced us, because you cannot imagine what it means to fight a human who refuses to die. The hall was silent now. The soldiers who had mocked him earlier shifted nervously in their seats, their eyes avoiding his. The veteran's gaze held them like chains, unbreakable. The commander stepped forward, his voice deep. You came here to laugh at human myths. You will leave here knowing they are not myths at all. This man will show you what it means to face the truth. The veteran's scarred face remained calm, but his eyes burned with cold fire. He pressed the device again, and the holographic images shifted to a new scene. A battlefield darker and more terrifying than the last. He looked across the hall one final time. Mock our myths if you want, he said quietly. But when the day comes and you face us, remember this moment. Remember the stories you laughed at, and pray they remain only stories. The holographic screen glowed brighter. The next recording began to play, and the hall, filled with warriors, who once laughed at humanity, fell into silence. The holographic images burned bright in the alien hall. Flames, smoke, and human soldiers holding their ground against beasts 3 times their size. The alien recruits leaned forward in silence, their earlier laughter now nothing but a memory. The human veteran stood still at the front. His armor was old, scarred by battles long past, yet his presence was stronger than any polished uniform. His voice carried through the silence like a blade cutting the air. You mock human myths, he said, but tell me, have you ever fought when you knew you could not win? Have you stood where death was certain and still refused to move? The alien recruits shifted uncomfortably. One with red scales clicked his tongue and tried to laugh. Empty. Words. Any soldier can claim bravery, but words are not battles. The veteran's scarred lips twitched into a faint smile. Good. Then let us test your belief. He raised his hand, and the hologram shifted again. Now it showed a field of broken land, a battlefield filled with craters. The sky was black with smoke, the ground littered with ruins. A single line of humans stood against waves of armored enemies, creatures taller, stronger, faster. The recording shook as blasts of fire tore across the sky. The humans did not run. They did not scream. They stood shoulder to shoulder, rifles steady, faces calm. The alien recruits frowned. One muttered, "Why do they not retreat? No army can hold against that." The veteran turned his eyes toward him. Because retreat is death, holding is death, but fighting. His voice dropped lower, cold and sharp. Fighting gives you a chance, and humans will always take that chance. The hologram zoomed closer. The recruits saw the human line, fire with brutal precision. Every shot struck its target. Every movement was practiced. The alien beasts fell in heaps, but the humans did not celebrate. They simply reloaded and fired again, their rhythm unbroken. The silence in the hall grew heavier. The veteran's voice cut through it. That was not training. That was not myth. That was my unit. Gasps spread through the recruits. Their eyes snapped back to him. He did not boast. He did not exaggerate. He simply spoke the truth. One recruit tried to push back. His tusks clicked as he hissed. Maybe you survived by luck. Maybe your enemies were weak. The veteran's cold eyes locked on him. Luck? He pressed the device again. A new scene appeared. This time it showed ships in orbit. Massive fleets surrounding a smaller group of human vessels. The humans were outnumbered 10 to 1. The recruits leaned closer, waiting to see the humans crushed. Instead, they watched as the human fleet darted like predators in the dark. Tiny compared to the enemy, their ships moved with impossible precision. They weaved between blasts, striking weak points, cutting through larger ships with deadly accuracy. The recruits gasped as enemy vessels exploded in waves. The humans fought like wolves, tearing apart giants. The veteran's voice was steady. Weak enemies? Those ships belonged to one of the oldest empires in the stars. They no longer exist, the recruits whispered in shock. Some shook their heads, refusing to believe. Others stared at the hologram with wide eyes. The veteran stepped forward. His boots echoed on the metallic floor, each step heavy with purpose. He scanned the crowd, his gaze sharp as a blade. You sit here mocking what you do not understand. You think our stories are lies because they frighten you. But tell me, do lies burn empires? Do lies erase fleets? Do lies carve scars into a soldier's flesh? He tapped his chest where an old wound cut across his armor. This scar is a story. This scar is truth. I carry them all. The recruits sat in silence. Their mocking grins were gone. Their eyes followed him like prey watching a predator circle closer. The veteran turned back to the hologram. The images shifted again. Now it showed humans fighting not with rifles or fleets but with their bare hands. A recording of soldiers out of ammunition, standing face to face with alien warriors, blades flashing in desperate combat. The recruits watched as humans fought with raw fury, refusing to surrender, refusing to fall. One recruit whispered almost to himself, "They fight like they do not fear death." The veteran turned to him, his eyes burning. "You are wrong. We fear it. Every soldier fears it. But humans do not let fear control us. We take it, and we turn it into fire. That is why our enemies break. That is why your kind whispers of myths." The hall was thick with silence now. The arrogance had drained away, leaving only unease and respect. The veteran stepped back, his voice calm but commanding. "You wanted proof. You have seen it. But you have not yet understood it. For myths are not born from victories. They are born from the will to stand when everything else falls." He paused, letting his words hang heavy in the air. Then he raised his scarred hand and pointed to the recruits. "Do you want to learn the truth? Then stand with me, face me, and see if your laughter survives." Gasps erupted. The recruits shifted in their seats, stunned. A direct challenge? Against him? The commander at the front gave a slow, grim smile. You heard him. A demonstration. The hall filled with whispers and tension. The young alien soldiers who had mocked human myths only hours ago now felt the weight of a challenge they could not laugh away. And as the veteran stood calmly at the center of the hall, waiting, the truth began to dawn on them. This was no storyteller. This was no weak old human. This was living proof of the myths they feared to believe. The hall was tense. The laughter was gone. The alien recruits who once mocked humanity now shifted uneasily in their seats. Their eyes followed the human veteran as he stood calm and unshaken in the center of the chamber. His scars, his voice, and the images they had seen already spoke louder than any myth. The commander gave a slow nod. "Very well. Show them more." The veteran pressed the device in his hand. The hologram above him flared to life again. This time it was not a single battle. It was a storm of memories flashing one after another, trenches filled with mud and fire, where humans stood shoulder to shoulder as artillery rained down, frozen wastelands where soldiers wrapped in ragged cloaks marched forward, breath like smoke in the air, refusing to stop even as frost-bitten flesh burned. Cities turned to ruins where civilians picked up rifles and fought beside soldiers, their faces grim but unbroken. The alien recruits stared silent. They had seen war, yes, but this was something different. This was not about numbers or weapons. This was about will. The veteran's voice cut through the silence. "You believe strength comes from muscle, from claws, from weapons. But strength," he raised his hand slowly, "comes from choice. The choice to keep fighting when you know you cannot win. That is what makes a soldier. That is what makes a human. One recruit with jagged fangs growled. Stories. Anyone can claim such things. What makes humans different? What makes you so proud of suffering? The veteran turned his cold eyes on him. Pride? No. We do not take pride in suffering. We take pride in endurance. He pressed the device again. The hologram zoomed in on a battle long past. A small human unit stood at the edge of a collapsed city. They were outnumbered, outgunned, surrounded by towering war machines. And yet they fought. Every movement was precise, every shot mattered. They moved as one body, their voices calm over the comms. The veteran spoke softly, almost like a teacher. That was my squad. We were cut off. No reinforcements, no retreat. For 3 days we fought, without sleep, without supplies. We buried our dead in the rubble and stood over their graves until the enemy broke and left. They called it a miracle, but it was not. It was simply human will. Gasps rippled through the recruits. Some looked away, unable to meet the humans' eyes. The row. Veteran's voice grew harder. You mock our myths because you cannot understand them. You believe no species could fight beyond their limits, but you are wrong. Humans do not stop when limits are reached. We go beyond them. Because if we do not, we die. And humanity has survived too much to die quietly. The hologram shifted again. This time it showed a fleet battle, human ships smaller and weaker than the enemy. Yet they moved like hunters, precise and merciless. Enemy cruisers fell one by one, their commanders shouting in panic. Here, the veteran said, his tone steady. Our fleet was broken. Our weapons failing. We should have been destroyed. But humans do not ask, can we win? We ask, how can we make them bleed before we fall? And when the enemy realizes the cost, they turn and run. A heavy silence pressed down on the hall. The recruits who had mocked were pale now, their claws tapping nervously against the tables. One younger soldier whispered, almost trembling, "But why? Why fight when defeat is certain?" The veteran's eyes narrowed. Because survival is not about winning every battle. It is about never giving the enemy the satisfaction of your surrender. If we fall, we make sure our enemy remembers our names forever. That is why our myths live on, because we never let them die. The hologram flickered again. Now it showed something different. A field of crosses, rows of graves under a dark sky. Human soldiers stood silently, their helmets in their hands. No cheering, no music, just silence. The recruits frowned. They had expected more battles, more violence. But the veteran's voice grew heavy. Do you know why our myths carry weight? Because they are written in blood. Because behind every story is a cost we never forget. You laugh at our legends because you think they are exaggerations. But every legend we keep alive is a scar on our history, and every scar is a warning. The room was still. The alien commander's gaze was fixed on the veteran. The recruit sat frozen, their earlier arrogance replaced with unease. The veteran stepped closer to them, his boots echoing against the floor. His voice dropped lower, sharp as steel. You think war is about strength, but war is about will. And in the end, the side with the strongest will does not just survive. It defines history. That is why your kind fears us. That is why you whisper our stories, because deep inside you know they are not myths. You know they are truth. He stopped in front of the horned recruit who had laughed the loudest earlier. The soldier tried to hold his gaze, but under the veteran's eyes his confidence broke. He looked away. The veteran let the silence stretch before turning back to the hall. You wanted proof. I have given you proof. You wanted truth. I have shown you truth. But if you still believe these are only stories, then stand against me in combat and learn the truth carved into my flesh. The recruits stirred, uneasy. The challenge was real now. No hologram, no memory, a direct test. The commander's voice rumbled. Prepare the arena. Gasps rippled through the room. The veteran stood calm, his scars illuminated by the dim light. He did not smile. He did not boast. He simply waited, because he knew what they would soon learn. The lesson of war was not written in myths. It was written in him. The training hall buzzed with tension. The air was no longer filled with laughter. Instead, it was heavy with unease. The alien recruits who once mocked human myths now whispered nervously among themselves. Their commanders' order echoed in their minds. Prepare the arena. The human veteran stood at the center, calm and silent. His scarred face showed no pride, no anger, only patience. He had been challenged before, countless times, and he knew what was coming. His eyes scanned the recruits like a soldier reading a battlefield, measuring, calculating, waiting. The arena doors opened with a hiss. The metallic floor shifted, lowering into a wide circular pit. Energy barriers hummed to life, surrounding the combat zone with a faint blue glow. This was no training ring for sport. It was built for real combat demonstrations, where soldiers tested their skill under strict command. The commander's voice cut through the room. You doubt the human myths? Then face the human who lived them. Let action prove what words cannot. The recruits hesitated. None wanted to step forward. Their claws tapped nervously, their tusks clenched, their tails lashed against the floor. But the commander's gaze was unyielding. Finally, 3 soldiers stood, one with red scales and heavy armor, another tall with twin tusks, and a third with long, sharp claws. They were the strongest among the recruits, proud and eager to restore their honor. The hall rumbled with approval from the others. 3 against 1, one shouted. End the myths, another roared. The human veteran said nothing. He stepped into the arena. His armor was old, dented, and patched in places, but he moved with the steady grace of someone who had carried its weight for a lifetime. His hands rested lightly at his sides, relaxed, but ready. The commander raised his hand. Begin. The first alien charged, his scaled feet pounding against the metal. He swung his massive fist, aiming to crush the smaller human. The recruits cheered, then fell silent. The veteran moved. Not with speed that seemed unnatural, but with precision. He stepped just enough to the side, letting the strike pass. His hand rose, caught the alien's wrist, and twisted. In one motion, the scaled soldier was thrown to the ground, his armor slamming against the floor with a deafening crash. The recruits gasped. The fight had barely begun. The second alien attacked immediately, swinging twin blades with roaring fury. Sparks flew as his weapons slashed through the air. The veteran ducked once, shifted twice, his movements small, controlled. Then, he struck. His elbow connected with the alien's ribs. A single strike, perfectly placed. The tusked soldier staggered, gasping for air, his blades falling from his hands. The third recruit hesitated, his claws flexing. He tried to circle, looking for an opening. The veteran did not move. His scarred face was calm, his eyes locked on his opponent. The silence pressed heavier with every second. Finally, the clawed alien lunged. His hands slashed like blades. But again, the veteran's movements were simple. One step back, one twist of the body. He caught the alien's arm and used his momentum against him, slamming him into the arena floor. The crowd of recruits went silent. 3 of their strongest had fallen in moments, not with brutal strength, but with quiet efficiency. The veteran stood still. His breathing was steady. He looked at the fallen soldiers, then raised his eyes to the crowd. This is the truth of your myths, he said calmly. We do not fight with size, we do not fight with strength, we fight with discipline. Every strike is placed with purpose, every move is survival. We do not waste, we do not hesitate. That is why your kind fears us. The commander's eyes glowed as he studied the human. He had known the outcome, but even he was unsettled by the cold precision on display. The fallen recruits groaned, pushing themselves to their feet. Their pride was broken, but their eyes burned with something new. Fear. The veteran pressed the device again. The hologram lit up above the arena. This time the images were not of massive fleets or armies. They were of soldiers in training, humans moving in perfect unison, their drills sharp and relentless. Then the hologram shifted to real battles. Human squads fighting in silence, each member trusting the other so completely that they moved as one body. The veteran's voice rose, sharp and cutting. You thought myths were exaggerations, but what you have seen today is no myth. It is training. It is memory. It is truth. Humanity does not need legends to frighten you. We frighten you because we endure. The recruits lowered their heads. The silence was thick, broken only by the hum of the energy barriers. Then the veteran spoke one final time. His voice was low, but it carried through every corner of the hall. You laugh at us because you do not understand us. But one day, you may face us. And on that day, you will learn what every enemy before you has learned. That human myths are not stories, they are warnings. The arena lights dimmed. The energy barriers fell. The human veteran turned and walked away, his scarred armor catching the glow of the hologram as it faded behind him. The recruits did not cheer. They did not laugh. They sat frozen, their pride shattered, their fear etched deep into their hearts. The commander's voice rumbled like distant thunder. Now you understand. Humanity does not need to prove themselves, they already have. And in that moment, every recruit in the hall knew. They had seen the truth behind the myths. And the truth was far more terrifying than the stories. The arena was quiet. The metallic hum of the barriers faded and the blue glow vanished into the walls. The recruits sat frozen, their bodies tense, their eyes locked on the scarred human who had just defeated 3 of their strongest in moments. No one laughed anymore. The veteran walked back to the center of the hall, his boots echoing against the metal floor. He did not smile. He did not boast. His face remained calm, his eyes cold and steady, as if the entire demonstration had been nothing more than another drill. The alien commander stood tall, his scarred jaw tight. His voice broke the silence. You have seen enough. You have felt the truth in your bones. The myths you mocked are not lies, they are lessons. The recruits shifted uneasily. Their tails, tusks, claws, and wings drooped low. They did not look at the commander. They did not even look at one another. All their arrogance had bled away, replaced by something heavier. Fear. The veteran raised his voice. It was not loud, but it carried through the hall like thunder rolling over a battlefield. You call them myths because you cannot explain them, because you do not want to believe them. But I tell you this, every myth is carved in blood. Every story you laughed at was paid for with flesh and fire, and I was there. The hologram flared again. This time it showed no battlefields, no fleets, no soldiers charging through fire. Instead it showed graveyards, endless rows of crosses, metal plates, or burning pyres. Each one a reminder of a soldier who never came home. The recruits stared, silent. Some swallowed hard, others lowered their heads. The veteran's voice grew sharper. You want to know why our enemies fear us? It is not because of weapons. It is not because of ships. It is because we remember. We remember every loss. We remember every scar. We carry our dead with us into every battle, and we fight so that their sacrifice is never forgotten. He stepped closer to the recruits, his gaze cutting through them like a blade. You cannot kill what refuses to die. You cannot break what turns its pain into steel. That is why your ancestors whisper our stories. That is why your leaders still fear our silence. Because when humans stand together, there is no surrender. The hall grew colder. The recruits shifted in their seats, their throats dry, their earlier pride crushed under the weight of his words. Xiedong, veteran paused, then turned to the fallen recruits who had faced him in the arena. They were still on their knees, panting, their armor dented, their pride shattered. He looked at them, not with hatred, but with the calm of a soldier who had seen too much. You fought well, he said, better than most. But you lost because you do not yet understand war. War is not about who strikes hardest. It is about who refuses to fall, no matter how hard they are struck. And that is the truth behind every human myth. The three recruits lowered their heads. Their eyes burned with shame, but also with something new. Respect. The commander stepped forward. His voice was deep, almost reverent now. This lesson is finished. But let this memory stay with you. Humanity's myths are not stories. They are warnings. Warnings to those who would laugh. Warnings to those who would test them. He turned to the veteran. You have done what words could not. You have shown them. The veteran nodded once. He turned back to the recruits one last time. His scarred face was illuminated by the fading hologram of the graveyard. His voice was calm, but it struck the hall like a hammer. Remember this day. Remember my scars. And when you hear the myths of humanity, do not laugh. Do not mock, for myths are only truths so terrible that the galaxy pretends they are stories. But I tell you, every myth you fear is real. The hall was silent. No one spoke. No one moved. The recruit sat frozen, the weight of his words pressing down on them like a mountain. The veteran turned and walked toward the doors. Each step echoed in the silence. The scars on his armor glowed faintly in the light as he disappeared into the shadows beyond the hall. When the doors closed behind him, the recruits finally breathed again. Their arrogance was gone forever. What had been laughter at the start of the day was now silence etched deep with fear. The commander's final words sealed the lesson. Do not mistake restraint for weakness. Do not mistake silence for peace. Humanity does not boast of their power, because they do not need to. They are living proof that the myths you mock will one day become the nightmares you cannot escape. The recruits bowed their heads. They understood now. Humanity's greatest weapon was not their fleets, their guns, or their strange endurance. It was the truth hidden inside every story, and that truth had just been etched into their hearts, etched in fear, never to be forgotten.